Right here we have our prepping area. So these are some items that will go down in the next few weeks for our exhibition. So they come here, they get all gussied up, leaf shine, staked, and then they'll go down for their debut for the public to see.
The powder house.
Exactly, they're getting ready. They got their makeup brushes and they're getting all
ready.
These
are the ones that just wake up and they kind of look good already.
They do.
So.
I mean, it's like, I woke up like this, right?
Like I dragged myself out of bed this morning and was on the Amtrak.
I love all things orchids, all things plants, all things horticulture. I am the lead horticulturalist within the Smithsonian Gardens Orchid Collection. So I'm tasked with safeguarding and managing this fabulous collection that you're just about to see.
And how many orchids are in your collection right now?
A little over 5,000.
Oh, don't you max out at around 6,000 here?
So
facility?
we have, we're working for refinement and growing our collection.
Okay.
So as a living collection, it's never stagnant, right? It's always growing, ebbs and flows. We have a max of probably around 7,000.
Okay. Species versus hybrids.
Yes.
What are we going to see? Because I know conservation is a big focus.
Yes,
there.
And so we have shifted our model to more of the conservation, so focusing more on the species. So we have about 65% species, and then the rest are hybrid, with an ultimate goal of 75% species.
Keep a lot of clean culturing.
Yes.
I feel like I should be in a hazmat.
Yes. Well, good horticulture is clean horticulture.
Yeah. One of the things that I know about orchids, and we've gone to other facilities, they'll have a table and they'll be like, these are the ones with viruses. These are the ones not with viruses. But I don't think you've tested for everything here for no viruses.
Yes. So we've gone through our collection. It's been probably twice we've done it so far, and we've tested every single collection item to make sure that it's virus-free for the two viruses that we primarily test for, which is Cymbidium mosaic and ORSV, Onodonton glossum ring spot virus.
And these viruses are often transferred how? Through like tissue culture, through bad propagation methods,
it's mainly through sap to sap transmission.
Okay.
So if I'm working on this
it's like
plant,
a plant STD.
Exactly. So if I'm being sloppy, it could infect.
What?
I know. No.
With the propagation tools.
Yes.
orchid houses in different places, they talk about how they don't want to get rid of some of the ones that have viruses because they've been in their collections. It was like the initial plant within the collection, but it always had that virus, and they just try to keep it separate. I would go mad, but
yeah, and that's a hard thing to do. It's kind of one of those, you're throwing the baby out with the bathwater.
Exactly.
That's been said. Here at Smithsonian, when we went through our whole collection to really ensure that we're doing everything proper, ensure that we have the highest standard possible.
Take us through, and feel free to name some species, ones that you have stories for. Maybe there's some really popular conservation ones. I'd love to go through it all.
Yeah, no, this is great. So we have 4 ranges within this collection, over 15,000 square foot within our growing ranges for orchids. So we have an intermediate high light level, we have an intermediate lower light level, and then a hot, steamy Sumatra.
Oh, interesting.
And then we have a seasonally cool house for our Cymbidium collection.
Interesting. Okay. Do you specialize in certain ones from different regions, or?
Yeah. So we primarily have focused on tropical U.S. So North American tropical natives that would be found in Florida.
And that's just about it.
No, that's it. Central America, the Caribbean, South America. That's our primary bread and butter.
Okay,
but then we also dip and dab all over the globe.
Right.
Since Smithsonian is international, it's global, so are the orchids.
Is this the National Orchid Collection here, or no?
It's one of the National Orchid Collections that's federally funded.
Okay,
so
got it.
we have Smithsonian, and then we have the United States Botanic Garden, who's also another federally funded institution.
And I'm sure you do a lot of like propagation. You probably share.
Yes, it's all about about collaboration and ensuring that we safeguard. If we're safeguarding, and then they can also safeguard, vice versa. So it's a great collaboration that we've had, over the last, this collection started almost 50 years ago. So the collaboration's been ever since.
So one more question on the conservation side of things, especially with orchids. Do you have to keep a certain amount of the same species, and are you trying to get genetically distinct ones?
Yes, so we're trying to get a full spectrum. So looking at, one species, we'll try to have at least 3 different genetic diversity, just to get that breadth of a species. You'll see some species that we'll have 5 different varieties, and they're all unique and different that give them that quality, but they're the same species, which is just, really magic.
Right, so like a different form, different variety.
Yes, different color, fragrance, smaller, larger, all that good stuff.
Great, well take us through it.
Yeah. So this is our intermediate zone. So it gets about 55 at night.
Gorgeous.
Yeah, so they're starting. We're actually
try not to touch.
Oh yeah, so we're in the midst of exhibition season.
Yeah.
So there's usually more in bloom, but it's actually down in our exhibition right now. We have about 500 collection items from this collection on display now.
Great.
Right here we have our prepping area. So these are some items that will go down in the next few weeks for our exhibition. So they come here, they get all gussied up, leaf shine, staked, really nice, and we stage everything. Everything is on its own little disc here.
Look how flouncy
yes,
this is. It's
very
just, like,
flouncy.
So garish.
Yes.
How about this one? Sorry, this one caught my eye, where it's like an orb. I know it's like a
so
little
this is
past its prime.
A Laelia species.
Wow,
so
it's
this is a stunning. So this has been open for about a week and a half. So these are
a little tired.
A little tired, but there's some other fresh ones that we'll go see.
That's
but that is from Central America. And then this Gurianthe skinneri, this is the flower of Costa Rica, actually. So
is it the country?
It's the national flower of Costa Rica.
Yeah.
So really beautiful. I mean, I love that vibrant fuchsia color.
Well, and also this little tube. It's kind of got this little curve in the tube, coming out. It's just so pretty. So, it's very elegant, very feminine.
And they all have their own unique personality, which I really just love.
Well, we're heading down to Costa Rica in November, so I'm going to have to look.
Yes, there's a lot of orchids.
Flower.
Yes.
I need like an orchid guru, because I'm not an orchid guru. And if we're going to Costa Rica, a lot of people will concentrate on the Eraceae, but like if you were there, you'd be like, look at that orchid, look at that orchid.
That's an orchid, oh my gosh. You're like, really? Yeah, that is an orchid. One that I absolutely love. I'm a path guy.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of crosses of this one.
I mean, just the character.
Yeah.
I mean, it is nature's art. When you look at the color,
the pinstriping.
Oh, it's just so fun.
It seems like it's like a carnivorous plant looking, you know what I mean? With the, does it have a stinky bloom?
It doesn't. So it doesn't, for us right now, I don't smell anything, but of course I'm not the audience, right? Yeah. It's the pollinator that's the audience.
That's why I'm asking who the audience is.
So the audience would be a fly or a bee. And so those hairs, you can see it's attracted whether it's from the scent molecules that this plant produces, but then also the symmetry, the markings, the hairs. The insect would go in that little pouch and then not be able to find its way out because it's like a little toilet bowl with hairs.
Right.
And then it goes out the back where you can see there's pollinia, which is the pollen
and it gets
sacs.
stuck right
And then
on.
it has to push out, and when it does that, the pollinia gets stuck to the
I always feel
insect.
sorry for the
I know.
insect. He's like flying a little sideways.
And it's all trickery and mimicry.
Yeah.
No nectar or anything.
Yeah, it's so impressive. Beautiful flower.
Yeah, really. And this one came to us in 2015. So it's been here, and this is, I think it's second bloom that we've had since we acquired
Also
it.
admiring the substrate. That's something like just like a nice barky,
Yeah.
charcoaly, big chunky perlite. So
So we have different mixes that we use depending
Yeah.
on what the orchid is. So we have different mixes that we've come up with based on our growing conditions and how we care for our orchids.
Amazing. I want to see this one because that color is just phenomenal. This like
Oh, isn't that beautiful?
Pale,
Yes.
dusty lilac, but like kind of grayish. You know, it's
So this
gorgeous.
is Cattleya walkeriana.
So it's also a species.
Also a species.
Yeah. And it's not as like flouncy as some of the other Cattleyas, I think, that have been crossed. You know?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But subtle beauty.
But
right?
I like that. I am a much more subtle beauty flower. Like even when I find in my own gardens at home, like the understated flowers that are not cultivars, I have a tendency to go towards that for whatever reason. So I admire that as well. But these buttery yellows, like look at this. This is like
I know.
This is like when you feed a chicken marigold and like the inner yolk is like this color.
It's real. I mean, brightens up your day, right?
Yeah, it absolutely does. It's so funny because I had this kind of thing where I'm like, not really into yellow flowers, but then when you see them and they come, they literally brighten up your day. So, yeah, phenomenal. Now, how long do some of these hold their blooms?
So it depends. It depends also if they produce a fragrance or when they open the humidity levels. So some of this will last about 2 weeks.
That's
and then it
pretty
will start to go.
impressive, though. Yeah.
Others, this will actually last up to 3 weeks.
But this is like they start to bloom asynchronous, like they,
Yes,
right? And then this
yeah.
one looks like it's blooming all at once.
It just, bam, it's putting on the show.
Yep. Look at this cute, like,
I know.
oh my God.
That's also a species.
Oh.
It's like a little mouse.
I know, it's like a little mouse slipper.
So cute.
Can you pick it up and show them?
yeah.
Or yeah? I don't want to touch anything here.
Yeah, really, really cute. Got our protective little container here.
Yeah.
So sweet. So this is a phragmipedium. It would naturally,
Even the little fuzzies on
little
it.
fuzz,
Yeah.
would be naturally from South America.
That's amazing. It just looks like a little belly button fuzz, like on the side of it. And then here's another Paphiopedilum.
Yes.
These are the ones that are so beautiful for your house because even if it's not in bloom, the leaves are stunning.
Well, and grow it on your windowsill.
Yeah.
I mean, it's such a great plant for the hobbyist.
Now, I don't know about the species, growing species, but you get a lot of hybrids and they seem to be relatively affable to a home environment.
Yes. No, I definitely recommend a Paphiopedilum hybrid.
Yeah.
I'm also partial to them, so they're great. Another
Oh
phragmipedium.
yeah, look at this. It's just so stunning. Now, is it usually curlier or is it kind of like hanging down?
Yeah, this one will kind of go down. It's
Yeah.
going to keep on growing, the petal.
Interesting.
So it should get down probably another 5 inches.
And does that dangle? Is that like dangling there?
Kind of dangles in the wind.
Yeah, to kind of like maybe
Entice.
Yeah. I mean, look at these
I know.
colors. It's insane. And then here's another one that's really like understated. You kind of have to really look under the leaves.
And what's interesting about this particular Maxillaria species is actually collected in the 80s from a collecting expedition that the Smithsonian Museum of Natural History had. So this was wild collected.
What's interesting too is that you look at this leaf, if it was not in flower, I'd be like, this kind of looks like a carex or something, you know what I mean?
Like, oh, it's an orchid.
Yeah. I mean, it would totally throw me off for somebody who's like a little bit more of an orchid novice and just kind of seeing it out in the wild, and you'd be like, is it or isn't it? You know?
And this is a great example of trends in orchids. So this is a modern day Cattleya hybrid, and it's that
this one
fiery,
has a scent.
fiery,
Yeah, very
Sharpie realness.
Yeah, and unbelievable. The funny thing is when people hybridize them, they probably have no idea what kind of scent is going to come out of it, right?
Some of the seedlings might have fragrance, some may not, different color combinations.
Yeah. This smells like candy to me.
Isn't it great?
You want to give it a snort, Sandra? It's really good. It kind of reminds me of like a citrus candy. I don't know. Oh,
There's another one.
Yeah, here's another one. This is
like
a little bit more like fresher, I guess. It kind of reminds me of like a very loose allium bloom.
Yes.
Because it has that big globose inflorescence.
And it's just beautiful, the ovule of the flowers, that different color also kind of glows.
Indeed, yeah. Now, they obviously stick this out way high up in the air to like get their pollinators. Do you have to cut this off? Do you just let it as is, or how do you treat the flowers afterwards?
So most orchids will do what they want. We kind of we cater to them.
Okay.
This will shoot up its inflorescence like it's doing now, and then when it's done, we'll end up just cutting down right here. We'll give it a snip. And then the next pseudobulb, the next growth will produce a flower.
Do they reliably bloom year over year for you here?
They do.
Okay.
They do. So what's interesting too about our management style is we track the health of every specimen as well.
Okay.
So, and that relates to the bloom.
How do you do it? We can't even, this is a big population of plants. Like,
we
you
take.
gotta be organized. You gotta be a little obsessive compulsive.
It's a lot.
Like, not me.
It's a lot. We take about 2 weeks every year, and we'll go through every single bench, every single plant, and our 2 horticulturists that help manage this collection will go to each individual plant and be like, okay, you're looking good, you're green, oh, there's a flower, you have new roots, the roots are healthy, and then we have different categorize, and we categorize everything based on the health. And then if there's something that isn't thriving in our collection, after 2 years, we question, is it the right fit? Is it poor genetics? Do we not have the right growing conditions? And then that can be deaccessioned and given to another institution that may have the proper conditions.
Got it.
To ensure that it may not be right for us.
Yeah, well, it's true. I mean, we, I believe we were at was it the Atlanta Botanic Gardens? They specialize in alpine.
Yes, so that's Atlanta.
Yeah, so I was really impressed with that because they had their own custom system for alpines, and they're like kind of little miniature orchids. A lot of them are. So I would imagine, and that's not something that you really specialize in here, right?
We don't, not because we just don't have the facilities.
Right, but that's the interesting thing. You kind of like, you could collaborate and you could say, hey, we're focusing on North and South America.
Exactly, because I mean, with over 30,000 species, you can't collect them all.
You use some plastic here, you have some terracotta. It seems like you prefer terracotta here.
So in this house, this is the most monoculture you'll get for our orchid collection. So a lot of cattleyas, the corsage orchid, flash flamboyant. And then in our other houses, you'll see a lot more diversity where you're like, are you sure that's an orchid?
Right, like how I was with that one.
Yeah, you're like, what? So mostly terracotta in this house because most of the cattleyas are epiphytes, so growing on another surface, so they need that breathability for their roots. So that's why we really grow them. And they also get big blossoms, so they get a little tippy. Yeah. So we want to make sure that they're staying in the right.
A little bit more of like heavy base.
A fun plant I really like is, and it has a little history and tie to Smithsonian, is an orchid hybrid that we actually named in honor of Smithsonian.
Oh, cool.
So this is RLC Smithsonian Sunburst 175.
Okay.
So a few years ago, Smithsonian turned 175.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, is that 175 hybrids?
Yeah,
like 175 years, okay.
And we were like, how can we honor this institution?
Yeah.
We're like, why not with an orchid?
Now, are you doing active hybridizing here?
We are not.
Okay. Because if you're focused on conservation, then I would imagine that you're not. But I know a lot of orchid collectors who just cannot help it. Like,
they got the toothpick and they're like, oh God.
Because you are playing a little bit of God and you're like, because you see 2 species and you're like, you 2 would be perfect together. You know what I mean?
Come on, big money.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. So, and I mean, because there's so many, like, there has to be over 100,000 hybrids of orchids. There's,
about 6 years ago, there was 110,000.
Exactly. Yeah,
but it increases, I think, by 6% each year.
Yeah, so that's it's crazy. Yeah, of those ones documented. At least.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, there's probably a lot of undocumented like orchid babies. So this is amazing. It's like a tie-dye sunburst. You said
sunburst. So we really tried to encapsulate the our symbol for Smithsonian, which
Yeah.
is a Smithsonian sunburst. So we
Ah,
wanted
yeah,
to
that
encapsulate.
makes sense.
So there's another one there,
Yeah.
given the vibrant colors.
It's in a cage.
Yeah, yeah. So this is we keep our orchids in cages. No, this is part of one of our measures to take. This plant got a little too much sun,
Okay, I see.
so it's a mobile
It's a
shade
shade house.
structure
Oh.
to just make it so it's mobile. So
Yeah.
we can come to the orchid. We don't have to rearrange. We can just come to the orchid and ensure that it's getting the proper amount of sunlight.
I love seeing these ideas because they are just so DIY and so clever. And it kind of reminds me of like when I was in Thailand and we were in the Hoya house and they had all the shade cloth, but if there was one in particular that you could just move it, almost like a chicken moving mobile.
Yeah, and it's perfect. So if this plant needs more light, we just
Yeah.
move it, or vice versa.
That's great.
So this one goes to our roots with historical hybrids. So
Oh,
this
okay.
is the world's first intergeneric hybrid that was registered by the RHS.
So can this actually produce viable seeds if it's intergeneric?
It can.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
But this particular plant actually is from 1893.
Wow.
It was first registered. It's the original cutting
Wow.
from the original plant.
So what are the two genera that it's crossed with?
It's Cattleya and Encyclia. And so it's a beautiful color with the beautiful
Yeah.
red. But that's also a really interesting story when it comes about the historical preservation of hybrids, species.
Yeah.
One thing that now we can preserve for future generations in the collection itself. So this is a lot of plants, as you can see.
Yeah.
So it's not just me, it's also our wonderful horticulturalist, Caroline Stokes, that helps as a team to really care for this collection. And
Yeah.
I'd love to have her talk about some of the practices to keep the collection going.
Perfect. I would love that. So Justin just passed this off to Caroline, and you are basically like the cleanup crew here, huh? I guess.
Well, yes, we're both horticulturists. I guess Justin handles more of the high-level sort of curatorial decisions, deciding what we get into the collection. And then I, as a horticulturist, help out with the day-to-day cultural care of the plants and integrating that information with our collections system.
And that is no small feat.
Yeah.
I mean, you got a lot on your hands here.
Yeah, so because we are incorporated within the Smithsonian and we are an official collection
Yeah.
of the Smithsonian, we're required to follow the same procedures for tracking, for maintenance as a collection of art or artifacts. So
Fascinating.
that adds
Okay.
another level
Right.
of intricacy and sometimes a little administrative
Yeah.
slowdown.
But what's so fascinating about that, because I keep a spreadsheet of my plants and this and that. I don't like of where I got it and all that other kind of stuff, but you probably have a lot of that data and have that data for a long period of time.
Yeah.
Did you have to digitize a lot of things that were written by hand
Yeah,
initially?
I believe it was in the 2000s where
Yeah.
the records transitioned from written to digital, and now it's all integrated within a database,
Yeah.
and we have these handheld units that we can use to scan plants. So if we look at a label, you'll see we have a unique accession number here
Yeah.
that tells us the year we got it. We have the plant's name, the greenhouse it should belong to, and then on the back we have that barcode. So that allows us to just quickly do a scan,
Oh,
and then we
fascinating.
can log cultural notes. So if I noticed a pest on this, or
Yeah.
if I applied a particular IPM treatment to it, I could log it there.
So you have to do that for every single plant, even if it's clean?
We do virus tests
Yeah.
regularly. I'm not going through every day and
Yeah.
scanning every single
Right.
plant, but when there's an issue to be addressed more so, that's
Yeah.
when we use the scanner. And then Justin also mentioned that we track our phenology data. So about once a week, someone will go through and scan anything that's flowering so that we can kind of make a graph more or less of what flowers when, see if we have any gaps, because ideally we want something displayable year round.
Do you work with any volunteers or only in the public-facing collection? or
Yeah,
do you-
I think we have 4 or 5 volunteers who come to the
got
orchid
it.
section
and
regularly.
that are maybe more consistent.
Yeah,
'cause
yeah.
I would imagine you have to be trained up to kind of do this.
Yeah, so we
Yeah.
have a pretty stringent virus prevention protocol that we're both trained in, and then we get our interns and volunteers trained on as well. that's why we care so much about maintaining proper spacing of plants, and when handling, we want to do anything that would avoid transferring the sap of one plant onto another plant.
Right.
So you'll see if we're ever handling a plant in a significant way, we'll wear these compostable gloves, so we have a barrier. If we're going to do any grooming, we would use a pair of clean scissors.
Which I'm assuming means clean and dirty.
Yes, exactly. Easy color coding system.
Yeah.
So yeah, we would take scissors out of the green bucket, do whatever grooming we need to do, and then when that plant is done, these scissors go in the dirty bucket.
Right.
And for the next plant, we would switch to a new pair of scissors. And then in
lot of
between,
scissors.
yeah,
you're gonna buy them at wholesale.
Yes,
bulk.
definitely.
Go to Costco and buy them at bulk.
Yep. And then once we have a full red bucket, we'll sanitize it with detergent and then a viricide, and then it goes through an autoclave before it can go back to the green zone and we can reuse it. So
I feel so dirty as a houseplant owner.
well, yeah, it really makes you
There's so
think.
many times where you're cutting corners.
Yeah,
you know
or
what
you're
I
just
mean?
using a single pair of
Yeah, you're
pruners
wiping
to
them
go
off
around.
on your.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, and then
Yeah,
on the
it's like it's being like in a medical facility.
yes, definitely.
You know, really, it's that sanitary.
We say that it's like a hospital in here because
Yeah.
any of these plants could have virus and the symptoms might be latent. You know, we
Yeah.
might not see them, so we have to act as if everything might.
Right. So visually, when you're seeing something,
Yeah.
when you're seeing like the Cymbidium virus, or what does it manifest? I'm sure ring spot looks like a ring
Yes.
spot, but like, you know, what are you looking for? Like,
Yeah.
what are the signs?
Another sign would be the ring spot
Yeah.
is common, and then color break on the flowers.
So like a little yellowing, or like
kind of like streaks.
streaks, okay. Which
would-
some people would be like, oh, that's
Yeah,
a
well,
cool
it's,
new,
it's hard to
new
tell
look. Yeah.
if it's like a hybrid or if
Yeah.
it's not supposed to be
Yeah.
doing that. But to make sure that we're catching everything, when we get a new plant in, we do an initial virus test, which is on a rapid strip, just like a COVID test.
Interesting.
We do the
like
same
a
one.
PCR kind of
Yeah,
thing.
kind of.
Yeah, but what do you take? Their sap, or what do you?
You can do any tissue. Sometimes the root tips can be good,
Oh,
or
interesting.
part
And
of
you
a
just
leaf
like
with a vein.
rub it on?
It's kind of like a little test tube
Oh, okay,
with the
got it.
solution, and then you like make a paste with
I see, okay.
the plant
Yeah.
tissue, and then stick
Fascinating.
the test strip in there. But we do that when we get a new plant in, then 6 months later with the same plant, and then another 6 months later. So they're virus tested 3 times in the first year, just in case any symptoms emerge after we've first received them. And then once it's integrated into our collection fully, it will again get virus tested about every 2 years when we repot. So
Wow.
it is a lot of effort, but virus has dropped significantly since that policy has been instituted. So
Now I see you have a bunch of signs and flags.
yes.
So what does this mean?
So since there are so many plants out here and there's multiple people working within the collection, we try to have an easy communication system about any pest or disease issues that we might have. And so you can see we have bacterial and fungal issues,
Yes.
scale, mealybug, of course
Yeah.
we can't escape.
Yeah.
And so we'll do regular scouting about once
Yeah.
a week. And if you see something, you stick one of these plaques in there, and then we can figure out how widespread it is and
Yeah.
see if we need to do
and
any
what,
treatment.
And what are the orange flags?
That's just for extra visibility.
Okay.
So for a plant with a lot of leaves where
Yeah.
these could get hidden.
I
we'll
don't
add
see any
another.
orange flags in here. you
Yeah,
know?
yeah, we're doing okay
Pretty
these days.
There's one orange flag over there, you know.
Yes.
Now I'm going to be looking for orange flags. No, this is great. I mean, unbelievable job. You know, I can't. Oh yeah, and integrated pest management. You have it on a lot of places.
Yeah, so we do try to use beneficial insects as much as possible in tandem with any chemical pesticides we might use. We really treat the beneficials as a first and preventative step.
Oh, so it's a preventative step
Yeah,
in most
so-
cases. Is this like something for scale or thrips?
These
or?
ones are for thrip. This is
Okay.
Amblesius cucumerus, and they're a predatory mite that targets thrip. And so we put them out pretty regularly, and then if there does happen to be thrip on a plant, the mites can get it before it becomes a significant issue.
Yeah.
And
Scale is something that I find, like especially the hard scale, like
Scale is really difficult.
most of the time, when I go to botanic gardens, they're like, that's the one time that we will use like an insecticide.
Yes.
Yeah.
Same for us.
Yeah.
And yeah, we do a lot of hand removal of scale.
There's only so much you could do.
Yeah.
You know, because they have the little crawlers are out, you can't see them.
Yes.
You might be spreading them elsewhere.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah.
So sometimes you do need the big guns, but
it's good to hear all the different practices across like the botanic gardens and triangulating it, because it really, I think, helps people put that in perspective. And one kind of sea change that I've seen across a lot of botanic gardens is that there are so many botanic gardens now that almost exclusively use integrated pest management.
Yeah, so we're figuring our strategy out and trying to cut down on the chemicals as much as we can.
That's great. So your typical day then, you get in here, you have your coffee or your tea.
Wait for the sun to come up, typically.
Yeah.
And then I get out here and we hand water all of the orchids that you see.
Oh my goodness.
So
is it with RO water?
So we actually have a rainwater system, which I think we'll talk about a little later.
Love to see it.
So it's rainwater, and then we have a fertilizer dosing system.
Amazing.
So we can tailor it, whether it's a general fertilizer or a bloom booster, depending on what season we're in, what we need. And then I'll go around and water what needs to be watered. If I'm doing every single plant, sometimes that can take 3 hours because we have 4 houses, 5,000 plants. So
I could imagine it would take longer than that. You must be really fast on the watering can.
Yeah,
Do you have like a hose, I guess? Or
we use just your standard
okay.
garden hose, but I definitely have my patterns worked out so I can be the most efficient.
Amazing.
Get a good podcast in. That helps too.
That's perfect. It's perfect.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't, like, there's like people who are like, that is my perfect day right there.
Yeah.
Watering plants and listening to a podcast.
It's very peaceful, especially when the mist comes on. And all. But and then from there, we assess what needs to be done, whether it's repotting, some sort of IPM treatment, just general grooming. So there is always something.
Fascinating. A lot of great work, a lot of hard work, and a lot of very diligent work. So good on you. Thank you so much for that.
So we've entered our second intermediate growing house. This is our lower light level house. So this is where you really see the diversity within Orchidaceae.
Yeah, you're starting to see it like on the foliage as well as like, you know, some things look palm-like, you know, it's crazy, yeah.
You'll see diversity, some minis that we have in our collection, some large ones that we have in our collection.
Yeah.
You'll see a portion of our Paphiopedilum collection. You'll see the notion of critical to the collection. So as part of Smithsonian, we have to have a plan when it comes to, if there's an emergency. So unfortunately, we can't protect all 5,000 plants. If there's an immediate emergency, we have 24 hours to pack up.
Right, okay, so the burning building philosophy.
Exactly. And so
who are you gonna take? Oh
exactly.
my God, this is
drama.
It's all on one table.
Exactly.
What happens if the fire's right here?
So we have multiple scattered out throughout the whole range.
Got it.
We've thought of that too. If a panel goes out, oh my gosh, what's going to happen?
Yeah.
So one of the things is if it happens at night, no one's going to know where the critical plants are.
Yeah.
So we've tried to really make it a visual cues with having this reflective tape, reflectors within this range. These are all plants that have wild collected data and have scientific publications associated with them, whether it's through various universities or the Smithsonian itself. So these are all plants that have that data, so we want to preserve.
take us through some of those. Like, why are these ones that, are they just because of critical habitat, or like which ones, are they extirpated in some environments? Like what it makes these critical?
Yeah, so most of these have been associated, this whole range right here, some maxillarias. These were collected from scientists at Smithsonian Natural History.
Okay.
And so these are in areas that are prone to deforestation. Some of these were collected, let's see the date, this was in 1982. So this has been in our collection. So we have press herbarium specimens in the National Herbarium. So it's kind of the perfect specimen. You have the geographic data, you have flower samples, you have press specimens, you have digitalization, and you have the living plant here.
Amazing.
So these are plants we also are on our list to disseminate to other botanic gardens. So whether it's the East Coast, the Middle, and then the West Coast as well, to ensure that geographically, if something happens on the East Coast and everything's on the East Coast, we're done.
Right.
So if you diversify and figure out what's happening, and we're doing that across the board when it comes to other institutions as well, like San Diego Global Zoo, they have a prominent orchid collection that is mostly CITES.
Okay,
and
chalk that one up on maybe a future tour.
Yes, it's fantastic.
Okay.
And we do a lot of collaboration with them, sharing material to ensure that we coast to coast, right?
That's great. This one's really catching my eye, and I'm sorry, I'm like kind of looking past you. This one kind of reminds me, not exactly, but it looks like a Hoya Commingiana from afar, but look at that leaf structure and the way that it's growing.
Yeah,
it looks like it should shingle almost.
This is a type of dendrobian, actually.
Oh.
I can do even better, I can bring it out. Oh, and it has some flowers too.
Oh, cool. Didn't get a chance to see that.
This is actually an Apio Culicula. I'm not gonna,
I don't know.
I'm just gonna say this is a species. I can send you the name.
Yeah. Oh, that is funky. It's like it's very spidery.
Yeah, so this is a really unique one that we have in our collection when it comes to diversity and looking at just leaf types and what's going on.
Look at how the leaf is shingling on the stem. You know what I mean? It's almost wrapping around. It's a beautiful structure.
And so you could imagine this just festooned on a tree.
Oh, absolutely.
Just coming down and being like, that's with all the ferns, the moss-covered branches.
I was imagining it festooned on my wall.
I know.
That's the problem.
And the teeny flowers, I just saw some pink.
Right here, down here.
Some really teeny pink flowers.
And this would be a one where you're like, the flowers not so much, but the leaf structure alone is very
exactly.
neat. Yeah.
And then these are some plants that we actually just got into the collection about a year ago.
Now, are you actually festooning them onto these?
These came in like this, but we usually let them acclimate for about a year, and then we will repot them into the substrate that we would like.
Got it.
So this is a beautiful Phalaenopsis species. So when you think of the moth orchid that you would find, in your grocery store, and this is a species Phalaenopsis.
Wow.
For all intents and purposes, it has one little leaf, and then it goes completely bare.
Now, how do you repot this? Are you repotting it in with the little wood shard? Because I can't imagine ripping it off,
So something like this, we would mount it.
You would still mount it?
Yes, and so we would probably just put it to a big piece of cork.
I see, yeah.
And then it could fully engulf the cork.
Okay.
You got a little engrecoid.
Oh my God, it looks like a little snake
I know,
head.
isn't it beautiful? So this is actually part of our want list, wish list, so focusing on IUCN red list plants. So this is actually critically endangered from Madagascar. So
so many of our plants have not been.
Oh my gosh! Don't even get me started. I know.
It's just like we look at the animals, but we never see how many plants are actually truly endangered. So the fact that it's made it on the red list is amazing unto itself.
And most things, from Madagascar, you can.
Madagascar is pretty much all. Everything there is. So it's endemic and endangered.
And so plants like this, we look at sourcing. Whether we're getting donations or we're purchasing from a reputable vendor to ensure that they're not poached directly from the wild, that it's second generation, to ensure that we're ethically sourcing all the collection items that we have and house within this collection.
Always a good practice, for sure. Especially when it comes to orchids.
And talk about leaves. I know you're a leaves gal.
I know, it's so true. And actually, one of the first times that I had seen some of plants like this, it was in Thailand, and I was like, I can't believe I'm seeing them in the wild. You know what I mean? It's it's unbelievable to actually see them growing in the wild. But it's so funny because you grew up in the Northeast, right?
I did, yes.
Yeah, and I never knew that we had like little jewel orchids.
Gadara, and yes, and the beautiful patterns.
Yeah, I'm like, where have I been? You know,
not in the right spots, right?
Yeah, Gadara pubescens,
yes.
right? That's one of our native.
Absolutely stunning, and that's one of the things too at Smithsonian is educating people about our native orchids as well. I don't know if you've been to goorchids.com or heard of the North American Orchid Conservation Center.
Oh, yeah.
And so we are one of the founding partners and collaborators with that institution. And one of their goals, of course, is to propagate, disseminate knowledge when it comes to our naturally occurring temperate orchid species.
That's great.
And we're starting to dip our toe ever so slowly. Of course, I'm a tropical guy, but one of those things you can always, orchids is a vast family, you can always learn.
That's the thing, so. You find out that you have them in the Northeast where there's winter, and then you become that much more impressed with the family, I think, in general. Even though they might not have the showiest blooms.
Exactly. I mean, the stories that all orchids can tell. I mean, everyone has such a unique story, whether it's connection to culture or just the story that they have with their pollinators or ecological stories.
Look at these tiny little guy. Unbelievable.
So cute. So this is a Lepanthes, and this is Guatemalensis. So it's hence its name. It's from Guatemala. And this is a beautiful plant we've had in the collection for about 3 years now. It was acquired as had about 3 leaves when we acquired it, so it's going little by little.
So who's pollinating these?
So those are usually fungus gnats.
Yeah, but who pollinates them here? Do you pollinate them?
We don't pollinate. They just keep going and going like the Energizer Bunny.
Got it.
These little guys. I mean, that's an orchid.
That's phenomenal.
There's little.
It almost looks fake. You know what I mean?
Well, and I love the addition of the moss too. I think that adds to the appeal.
Really does.
And a beautiful small dendrobium here. See the flower
very spiky,
right
very succulent.
So beautiful.
And how about this is almost like pinstripe?
Yeah.
Bizarre, right?
Just incredible. I mean, how it grows. It's on this piece of bark, and it's just slowly growing.
The leaf structure kind of almost reminds me of a little bromeliad-esque, where it's cup-like, but then it has this kind of funky thin pinstripe, and it's a subdued color. Very cool.
And then this is kind of where I like to talk about the mobile shade structures again.
Yeah, this is brilliant. I love this concept because anybody who has a small greenhouse and doesn't want to deal with the shade on the whole house, this is such a great little technique.
And this really has helped us because we don't want to sequester the amount of light that the other plants can get.
Right.
While trying to cater to these babes.
It's perfect. You could be really focused on it. The other thing that I really loved, and I don't know how you affix them here, is when I was in the Göteborg in Gothenburg in Sweden, to affix their orchids, they used pantyhose.
Yes,
that was really interesting. So I wonder what you use here.
Yeah.
Because most people use fishing line.
Yeah, we use pantyhose as well. So I learned that trick, 8 years ago when I went to Kew and visited.
Yeah.
And they're like, pantyhose, that's where it's at. And I'm like, really? Okay. So it works.
Oh, it's so funny.
And then one thing we do too is, there's so many people on the weekends that are also watering for us because of course we can't work 7 days a week between Caroline and I.
Yeah.
So it's ensuring that we have proper labeling with the signs and then also with
color.
The blue. So denoting that plants that need daily watering.
Yep.
So that's something that we always try to strive for to ensure that we're giving all the plants the proper care. And we've been able to kind of reorganize this whole house based on the microclimates and how the greenhouse is functioning.
From I don't know if you've prepped this place before we got here to film. I don't think so, but it just is so organized and so good looking. You know what I mean? Just from, an overview of it.
That means a lot. I mean, we try really hard.
Yeah.
Getting the lines. Making sure that everything has its proper spacing.
Yeah.
If we're going to all this lengths to cultivate these plants for future generations, we have to do it the right way.
Yeah, for sure.
It's the quality versus the quantity.
Yeah, you have the right kind of personality for it. You know what I mean? You have to have that certain kind of personality where you're like, look at this too.
Yes.
I mean, it's unbelievable. This is what draws people into orchids.
I know.
I have this block because I know if I passed that block, I would just be crazy like you.
Well, I'm so happy you're doing more orchid-themed videos. I was like, when's she gonna do? When she tips the iceberg of the orchids, watch out.
It's a block right now. It's a block. It's unreal. Look at those little guys. And the way that it looks like a little flame, like a little torch.
And then this plant over here I love to talk about as well is that cultural connection, the biocultural conservation connection. This is the national flower of Belize, the black orchid. Kind of looks like Medusa.
Don't touch it.
Don't touch it without a glove.
I got gloves.
Oh my God, all the gloves. Like, oh God. So this particular plant, I love it personally. I just think it's so fabulous with the downward facing petals and the beautiful burgundy black.
It's like a little octopus.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Without 8 legs. It's giving me Ursula vibes.
Ursula vibes, totally. This is a hard thing for me because if anybody's watched like a lot of my videos, I have a tendency to like want to touch plants, but I can appreciate, I'm like walking with my hands behind my back.
Like, oh gosh.
This one caught my eye. This is
the
unbelievable.
Silogeny.
It's like a burgundy orange.
And I originally saw this plant out of bud, and I was like, we have to have it for the collection because of that color.
Yeah, the color is amazing.
As more light has been coming now that we're heading into spring and then summer, it's going to intensify. So this will get even a little more. Yeah. And it'll have, and the flowers glow too, if you look at the flowers that are happening. And then we have an Oncidium species here. You can see it's getting quite tall.
Yes.
Now it's starting to branch out. We'll actually bring that down to our exhibition probably in the next 2 weeks or so. And you can imagine it's going to be quite the complication trying to put that in a van.
I mean, it's actually pretty impressive that, like, this is a tall greenhouse, and that spike is on its way up there. You don't expect that from the orchid, you know?
And then this area is our dormant area. So this is our blue zone. So what's going to happen eventually, we have our habanerias, which are these beautiful orchids that will be in bloom in probably another 2 to 3, or maybe a month and a half, and beautiful Sharpie colors and beautiful foliage. Some of these actually came from Longwood Gardens.
Now, this is a different potting medium slightly. It looks like almost like pine needle or really shaved bark.
It's actually from tree fern.
Oh,
so it's a ground tree fern, and then we add our perlite, our charcoal. And this allows for aeration, but also moisture.
Fascinating.
So when they start, because these, of course, go dormant, and then they'll flourish up. You'll see that some that are just starting to come up. And so what will happen is, we have our yellow zone. This is plants that they're coming out of their dormancy, and then once they get into the blue zone, that's when we have to water and fertilize more heavily. This is kind of some portions of our Lycaste collection. Pseudomere Lycaste, and these plants would grow in an area that has a seasonal drought. So whether it would be up in a tree or growing on a rock as a lithophyte, it would be going through a seasonal drought. So what would happen is these leaves go out, they're getting all the food during the growing season. And then when the drought happens, they lose all their leaves, they go deciduous.
And then it's just like
giant honking pseudobulbs to help them through the dry season to bring them to the next season of growth.
Fascinating. So they're not going to invest so much energy into their leaves becoming a very succulent plant. It's all in the pseudobulb.
Exactly. It's just seasonal. They're only made and manufactured for a year, and then.
Yeah. I bring it up because I think morphology is so fascinating, and this gets people to think about, where is my plant from? How is it growing?
Yes.
It's not investing in these leaves. It's deciduous, like that, no biggie. Like all these types of things, I think really helps us put us closer to plants and think about them a little bit more.
Yes.
Wow, this looks like wedding flowers.
Yes. So this is Dendrobium farmeri. This is actually a part of our collaboration with the U.S. Botanic Gardens. So this is some collection items that they have. So they're bringing them back. We try to bring plants back right when they're at the cusp of fading, just so we can keep the exhibition fresh. This plant here is just starting to fade, but this is named for an icon, Oprah Winfrey.
Oprah Winfrey.
Yeah, so it's just starting to fade. But this plant was on display for about 2 weeks.
Wow.
It was in, this year the exhibition is at the National Portrait Gallery and the Smithsonian American Art Museum, and Oprah just had her portrait.
This smells like powder,
so this is
very sweet powder. But it's got a musky scent to it too. It's like a very masculine powder, I guess.
Polka dots, fuchsia for days.
Yeah.
What's not the love? And then a new way that we've kind of innovated and tried to think of ways we can culture the orchids is looking at how can we grow them on little coat racks.
And the question is, can you do pull-ups on these?
Oh God, I don't think these are the heavy duty ones. I would just like.
I only did because I was looking for coat racks recently. I was like, why is every coat rack on Amazon having somebody do a pull-up on them? I was like, is this for pull-ups or for like hanging clothes or hanging plants? Right?
Yes, exactly. So we have these here, and so this is a way for us to be more mobile.
Yeah.
As we have our collection. These are also stanhopias, gongoras. So these are plants that actually will bloom from the bottom, and there's one right here that's starting to bloom from the bottom.
And
here.
are all these ones the ones that like smell like chocolates
yes.
and vanillas and stuff?
The rice pudding. It's almost like sweet to the death.
Yeah.
They only last about 2 to 3 days.
This is our dessert collection.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Here it is.
Where do we go next?
Yeah, we're gonna go into our next house. So we're changing zones.
Oh, bulbophyllums.
Yeah, so this is the fun. So this is a really fabulous one. I love this particular plant.
Yeah. I mean, look at it.
Is it?
It's like a sea creature. It looks like a welwitschia.
Yes.
I mean? But with like perfect leaves.
Stunning. So
Yeah.
this is a bulbophyllum flexianum. We've had it in the collection since 2015. When we first acquired it, it only had 3 leaves.
Oh, well, that deserves
Yeah, so it's good, with
Yeah.
all the care and attention to detail that we've been doing over the years. It's thriving.
Yeah, it really is.
And when it flowers, it smells, but it's also beautiful.
And they all hang down?
This has, it kind of looks like it's the size of a football.
Yeah.
And it has all unique
Yeah.
flowers, and it has this, rotten meat fragrance.
And it's like purpley.
It's
kind
purple,
of, yeah.
blood colored.
Yeah.
The plant is beautiful, but then when the flowers happen,
Yeah.
when we had a photography, when we did this, we captured this digitally. We had all the screens up, and we had everything going. So this whole area got cleared out, so we could get the perfect photo of this plant for our archives.
It's so funny because like the New York Botanic Garden just did like the fashion forward ones. And so, I mean, this looks like a gown, yeah.
Exactly.
If you were just like elevated behind it and you were like, yeah.
Oh, there we go.
That's a photo op later.
And then looking at how we manage the collection, this
Yeah.
is a custom designed stainless steel container that this plant will be popped in pretty soon. And this will allow us.
How much does this weigh, do you venture?
It's pretty
Like,
heavy.
Does it like 3 people? 2 people?
It's going to take a forklift.
Yeah, oh, wow.
It's mainly because it's also growing out the sides. So it
Yeah,
kind of
yeah,
they
yeah.
do what they want, I'm telling you.
Yeah.
So we're going to have to lift this up. We'll have bubble wrap everywhere to make sure. And then we're gonna have to forklift it gently into this container. So the hope is that we won't disturb this plant for the next 10 years. And who can imagine how big this is gonna get when
if you said in 2015, yeah, unbelievable. That's less than 10 years.
And then this is kind of our little bulbophyllum nook. So this is some of our smaller bulbophyllum, or I guess smaller compared to that.
Here.
This one is actually the same species, but a wee babe.
Huh.
So it's flexiana. This was a wee babe. And then other ones here, these are other ones that we have, the Phalaenopsis type leaf bulbophyllums. And this is Bulbophyllum Phalaenopsis bucky. And this is one that we actually have planted in a container like this, but it's on exhibition right now. It's the first time it's ever left the collection since we acquired it. So what's really cool about bulbophyllums is the diversity within this plant, within this genus.
Well, it's interesting now to see the diversity because most of the time in a collection I'll see something like this because it's a real showstopper, but not all of these little guys,
Yeah, so this one's a bulbo, that little orange one, Taiwanensis.
Yeah, how would you even, that's crazy.
That's a bulbo,
Yeah.
and then this one is a bulbo. This has a teeny tiny flower right here. It's almost trailing.
Yeah, and look at these little bulbs.
Yes,
That's unbelievable.
so cute.
It's like a little apple with a little. Yeah.
This one has a labellum that
Oh,
dances.
yeah, look at that.
So it's a dancing labellum.
Another form of enticing.
Yes, like come
enticement.
hither.
Yeah, exactly. That's like the equivalent to a twerk.
It is.
It's like a floral twerk.
They were the first ones, right? I mean, come on.
Who are we to say?
I know.
Humans didn't invent any of that.
Another Bulbo.
Yeah. Gosh.
I mean, what is
I know,
going
it's
on?
bearded. It looks bearded. There's another one hiding under there.
Yes, I saw that. I was like,
it's kind of like, it looks like it's on its way out, maybe.
It
but
just opened today.
Oh, it did
actually.
just open today?
So it's like a rotten meat color.
Oh, look at that color.
So this one is, and the labellums dance.
Oh yeah, they
do.
I do see.
Oh, and that color contrast.
It's like a coordinated dance movement.
So fun, and you can smell it actually if you dare to go in.
Well, I do like to smell them. So sometimes it takes me a lot to get like to vomit. That's pretty nasty.
Yeah,
though.
right.
Yeah. That smells exactly like rotting meat, or rotting flesh. Yeah. Because sometimes it would be more like, oh, that smells like gym socks, and it's like not that bad. But
and then another one that's coming out of dormancy, a little dormancy pad here, and then a beautiful.
That's cool. It's very. I mean, it clearly is an orchid bloom, but it reminds me a little bit of phlox.
This is also our transition zone. A lot of things are starting to come back to life. So these are our Signochi catasetum species and hybrids. So these are plants that I really have become fascinated with because of the pseudobulbs, and when they flower, it's incredible.
They have these like papery scales. Is that like where like the leaves kind of dry off?
Yeah, so that's where the leaves were attached.
It almost looks like a unicorn, like a.
Oh, I like that.
Like a little unicorn, yeah.
And so these will come alive. They're going to get to about this tall, and they're huge. We'll actually spread this out within probably 3 to 4 benches to give them the adequate space, and they get large and beautiful. They, let's see if there's any, but what's unique about these is they have both male and female flowers, either on the same plant or on different plants.
Do they flower at the same time or not at the same time?
Usually not at the same time.
So that they don't pollinate itself.
Exactly. Okay. But we don't really know what the trick is. Some people say if you grow them warmer or colder, you'll get a male or a female.
Oh, interesting.
But ours, they'll tend to do whatever they want. And usually we'll have male and female in the same plant, it's totally a mind craze, because you're like, how is this the same species?
Right, because they don't look anything alike.
They look totally different.
Oh, that's crazy.
One will be like a bucket with a little pouch, and the other one will be sprayed out, and then it has a pollinia that actually it's catapult pollination, trigger pollination. When the insect goes on it, it launches it.
So good.
Then here's our most of these are leafless orchids for all intents and purposes.
They look like roots, and that's
so just roots.
Yeah.
We have one right here that's flowering. So just a beautiful yellowish flower.
Looks like lichen-esque, or like, kind of like our tillandsia almost, I want to see the fuzzy leaf one right here. What's the fuzzy leaf one?
So this is a new one that we actually got in. So it's a new one for me. Pileophyllum.
Villosum, which makes sense, yeah.
So really, really beautiful. I was looking at a source and I was traveling and I was able to hand select this. I saw this out of the corner of my eye and I was like, is that an orchid?
Yeah.
So I was like, we have to have it for the collection.
That's great. I mean, you don't usually see a hairy leaved one.
Yes,
it's a little uncommon.
Such a fun one. And this is lower light. So eventually we'll probably put this under one of our shade structures. Yeah. I've never grown this species in genera before, and that's kind of the fun part of what we do, right?
You learn.
We can trial and error when it comes to
and
things.
Then you share that information with the others,
And the spots.
That is
another
maxillaria leaf pattern right there.
It's not all about the flower.
No,
it
really isn't. That's an incredible, like silvery spots. I mean, it looks reptilian.
And then more shade structures with some of our warmer growing Paphiopedilums, tropical Asian lady slippers. And then here's another critical to our collection. So these are all wild collected Stanhopias and Gongoras. So this is a good point to talk about kind of the functionality of the greenhouse. So we have our cooling pads here, which act as a cooling. Of course, we're in DC, in the DMV, so the balminess of the humidity only gets us so far in cooling.
Right.
But at least for the first 2 benches in the greenhouse, they get a little cooler during the summer. So that helps. We try to arrange our plants based on plants that need a little cooler. So they don't want to get your 90s or 100s.
Yeah.
And then we also have our exhaust fans towards the back, so when those will be pulling the air. If we weren't here talking right now, you'd see all the air movement.
Right.
All the leaves would be dancing, because we really want to increase the air circulation for pathogen mitigation.
Exactly, because that's where like things like you get like bacterial buildup. You get all
Yes.
it's like wind is like the life support for many
Oh, it
things,
is, and it keeps things, drying out. But then also you're helping with the process of photosynthesis, with the gas exchange.
That's true. Yeah.
So
Otherwise, it's just they're taking the carbon all around their leaf.
exactly. So increasing that.
Yeah.
What do you do to prevent them from drying out? Does that cold wall there add humidity to air as well?
So it adds both. So the cooling pads add both humidity to it, helping with the cooling, but we also have a MEFOG system, so a pressurized pulsing that helps. What you'll see, tiny particles of water to really help with the cooling and to keep the humidity. We try to have it around 65 to 80% humidity in here. Very humid.
So it's like a mist system.
It is. It's a fine mist system. So
Okay.
you're not wetting things.
Yeah.
You're just humidifying things.
Got it. It's like the thing that like when the makeup artist
Yes,
like, sprays your face right before she puts on the makeup.
Exactly.
We have more tours, plant tips, and DIYs coming up here on Plant One on Me, so tap on the subscribe and notifications so you know when the next episode launches. We also have a range of online houseplant tools and courses over at homesteadbrooklyn.com, and in the interim, see what we're growing on our sister channel, Flock Finger Lakes. We'll see you in the next video.